everyone, please excuse me filming in my bedroom today. We've got builders in the house and there's a whole load of chaos, so I'm hiding upstairs. You might hear them banging about and the dog's around, so she may come to visit us while we're having this chat. It's just the chaotic nature of today's video. I feel like it's 2014 vlogger vibes. I'm like in my bedroom. I don't have fairy lights, I'm sorry. When I first started this channel, I used to film in my bedroom. I don't anymore, but today we are. So there we go, that's the thing. I wanted to talk today about craft fairs and in-person selling events. I want to do 2 videos on this. So today is sort of part 1. Today's video I want to go through the basics, so how to find events, what to think about when choosing one, you know, everything you might need sort of in advance, what do you need to take with you on the day. And then I want to make a part 2 later where I share some of my, I guess, lessons learned and things that I'm kind of taking forward as someone who has done a lot of in-person events. So that might be a more kind of advanced, I guess, video of where I'm sort of going with in-person events, if that makes sense. Now, I'm an author, so I am going to talk about some book selling specific things, but really pretty much everything is going to work for most crafts and small businesses. So there may be some specifics, but overall this is going to be applicable to pretty much anyone. So let's get into it. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about is how to find your first event or your first few, how to actually find these in-person events. So what I would suggest first of all is that you start small. You don't have to, but I think it's really helpful to start with a small event or something very local, something where you feel quite comfortable, to try out your setup, to get used to talking to people and, you know, engaging people and making the sales, figuring out how everything works. One of my first events was quite a big one, the Breastfeeding Festival in Milton Keynes, and it was a long way away and there were a lot of sort of logistics, and it must have been one of my first events and it was really daunting. So I think it's helpful to start with something relatively low-key or just where you feel in your comfort zone to try everything out for the first time. In terms of actually finding events, so personally, I will have a look at particularly Facebook and the events and sort of events happening near me, and look out for things like craft fairs or anything literary, obviously because of the book selling side of things, sort of seasonal type stuff like Christmas and Easter, and then use that as a basis to find out what's going on. Another good way of finding out what events you could go to is to speak to other local small businesses or craft like makers who do those kinds of things, and speak to them about like what's good, what you know, what's a fun one to do, what ones have a really good footfall, what ones are really well organised. To start off with, you're probably going to be trying out different kinds of events and you will find the ones that you like, but speaking to other people who do them is really, really helpful. And as you're doing your first few events, speaking to the people at those events and getting a feel for what's good locally is really, really helpful. You can also have a Google for anything specific to the art that you make. So for me, I will look up things to do with breastfeeding because I write about that, or things to do with sort of by the sea, seaside, like festivals and those kinds of things, and see if I come up with anything that's something where I think is worth travelling to, or obviously is super local. I tend to stick with local because, you know, factoring in your mileage makes the whole thing a lot in terms of having to sell enough to make back what you've invested in the event. So pick out some events, contact the people who organise them, see if they have space, see all the sort of ins and outs of the event. Something to consider is whether the event is indoors or outdoors, partially because of the weather, and that may have a bearing on whether the stock that you have could get damaged, whether the event may get called off or it doesn't get called off but you're out in bad weather for a long time. But also, many outdoor events require you to have a gazebo, and whether you have one and all the things around that, which I'll talk about in a bit, is another consideration. So it may be that many outdoor events aren't possible if you don't have a gazebo. Some will provide them. So just bear that in mind. The outdoor-indoor thing is definitely worth considering, and in the UK, you know, the weather is always uncertain, so definitely worth bearing in mind. So once you have found some events, you've asked for information, you've applied for them, you've paid for your spot, there are a couple of things that you need to, excuse me looking down, I've got a list here. There's just a couple of things that you need to be aware of. Lots and lots of events will ask you to have public liability insurance. So that means that if your business in some way hurts somebody, you know, they trip over your table or something, that you have the appropriate insurance for that. I use Simple Business, I'll put a link below, and I get my insurance through them. Different events may ask for different levels of cover, so that's worth investigating if you're going to get insurance to make sure you have the right kind of insurance. Not every event will ask you to have it. It is a good idea to have it anyway. It protects you and your liability for the public, as I say, injuring themselves or something. If you sell certain goods, they will also ask you for things like maybe a food hygiene certificate, or you might have to have things pat tested. They might like to know whether you need any power. So there might be lots of little odds and ends that the organisers might need to know and that you need to have a think about. But the main one I would say is public liability insurance. So once you've found your event, you've booked your spot, you've got all the right paperwork, everything is good to go, we then need to think about what you might actually need, and I've got a whole list that I'm going to go through. Now I'm going to start with that thing that I talked about of gazebo. Obviously this is, you know, very much, you don't need it unless you're doing outdoor events where they don't provide one. If you have one, fantastic, but I would say from experience, the sort of garden ones are not up to the job. The weather in this country is not great. So the ones that are sort of storm proof, my one is metal, and I have really big stakes to secure it to the ground, and I also have big weights so that if I'm on hard standing I can weigh the gazebo down. Gazebos are dangerous in bad weather, so for me it's something that I'm really particular about, and if I feel uncomfortable, I feel it's unsafe, I'm not going to do it. So what my point is if you are thinking of doing outdoor events and you're thinking of investing in a gazebo, make sure that it's suitable for all weathers, because they won't cancel the event, or it's highly unlikely. It has to be very bad weather for that to happen, and that you have the appropriate stuff to secure your gazebo. I've been at events where everybody's gazebos are just falling to bits, so make sure you've got a really good one. They are expensive, so the likelihood is that if you don't have one, it may be something that you want to invest in later down the line. Now I know that lots of people who do craft fairs may at some point get like a sign written, you know, that the gazebo is sort of personalised and really eye-catching. As I say, it's just that it's really expensive. So I was fortunate that somebody gave me, my in-laws, let's be open about this. My in-laws had one from doing events and they said, would you like it? And I was like, yes, please. So I'm really lucky that I have a really good gazebo and I didn't have to pay for it. Frankly, if I'd have had to pay for it, it wouldn't have been worth it for my business in terms of the sales that I get. So I think that's enough said about gazebos, but just when you are considering indoor versus outdoor, just be aware if you need to invest in one, then that can be very expensive, but some events will provide them. So it's not a don't do outdoor events, it's just sort of a proceed with caution, and if you do need to get one, do make sure that you invest your money wisely. It's worth paying more to get a better gazebo that's going to not just totally fall to bits and become a hazard as soon as there's some bad weather. Right, so with that said, let's get away from the indoor-outdoor thing and just general stuff that you need. So first of all, a table. Some events will provide you with a table. I do think it's worth having your own table with you, even if they say they will provide it, in case something's happened and they don't have enough on that day. I've had that before. Or the table they provide you with isn't the size that you thought it would be. It can just be helpful to go, do you know what, it's okay, I have mine. So my one is just a pasting table, but you can get various fold-up tables. Mine is 6 foot. Some people might use a 4 foot table if you don't have many things that you need to have out. Some events where you are using theirs, they may ask you to specify, do you want 3 foot, 4 foot, 6 foot, or whatever they have on offer. So yeah, mine is a 6 foot pasting table, works for me. You will also want some kind of table covering. So I just have a white tablecloth. Different people use different things. If I buy a new one, in fact, I've got my bag of stuff here. So here's my tablecloth. It is literally a square, you know, just standard one. It's a really artificial fabric, so that means it washes really well. I've dropped coffee on this, I've had hot chocolate on this, I've had ink on this, I've had all sorts of things and it's all washed out. So yeah, the artificial fibres have been helpful in this particular instance. If I replace this at some point, I will likely get one of the elastic ones that kind of fit over your table, because this billows and I have to peg it so that people don't trip over it and things, and that's quite annoying. So I personally would quite like one of those elastic ones, and I would recommend having a look at those as someone who's used one that isn't. They're inexpensive, you can just use things that you have. Lots of people use all sorts of random table coverings, but you will want something most likely. Next on my list, some kind of chair. I do tend to stand up for events because it's easier to engage in conversation. You look a little bit more present, but you can sometimes be there for a really long time. So personally, I just take a fold-up wooden chair, but whatever it is that you want to take, just in case you need to sit down. Take a chair. I sometimes even take a cushion. Something that I don't have on my list that just passed through my head, and I'm going to mention it while it passes because it'll be gone soon, is something to do. I don't tend to take a book because then you're dividing yourself from the customer. I will choose things like crochet or just something I can do with my hands to occupy myself. You don't have to, lots of people don't, but particularly if you can engage in your own craft, for example, while you're there, that's really helpful. But yeah, having something to while away the time if there are quiet periods can be really useful. Next on my list is some kind of stand display type stuff. I'll show you what I have been using. So I bought these little book stands. You could put all kinds of things displayed on these. I've got about 8 of them. They weren't very expensive. You can get various different types of these, different sort of sizes and acrylic or other materials. They've been really, really good, and as I say, they didn't cost a lot, so that was really helpful when I didn't want to have a big outlay. I have now invested in a large stand. I'm going to put a picture of it up because I didn't want to build it for this video, so I'll put a picture of it up. I'm really, really pleased with this. I bought it off of Etsy, and you can get them on other sites as well, and you can get different numbers of shelves, you can have your logo put on it. There's lots of different ways of doing it, so it's a little bit more money, but I want something with a bit more height because up till now, I'll put a picture of my old setup up. I've just had a row of these and I think that's not very eye-catching, so I'm just changing things up and investing a little bit. But something like this, when I first started out, I used to have a stack of books with a book leaned up against it just to get, again, some height and so people can see things. You can use what you have at home. You can go to charity shops sometimes and get bits and bobs that you can stand things on. So there's plenty of options, but think about how you're going to display your goods and buy some little bits and pieces if you need to. Next on my list is you need your stock. I am actually going to link below a couple of vlogs I have of me doing selling events so you can see how I transport my stuff. I used to just bring big cardboard boxes of my books, but what I found in the case of books is that I might have to put them on the ground, and I was worried about the damp coming up from the ground. The books would get scuffed going in and out of the boxes. I didn't really protect them that well from bashes or the weather. So what I do now is I have plastic like A4 clippy boxes, which came from somewhere. Yeah, I didn't pay for them. Someone gave them to me, and I thought those would be handy. So as I say, you can use the things you have, things like Tupperwares or, you know, any kind of plastic storage box, and I have my books in those, and then they fit in a larger plastic wheelie crate. That means that I can go to an event really easily just pulling my crate along. And so yeah, you need to bring enough stock. You'd be disappointed if you could have made a sale but you didn't have the stuff with you. It's difficult to know how much to bring. I definitely bring too much, but you want enough stock, protected and easily transportable. Next thing is a card reader. Let me find mine. Here it is. This is mine. It's a sum up reader. It looks very swish. People comment on it, but it's because one of my daughters dropped it, and so the sticker is protecting the fact that the front is all crazed. But if you want fun stickers, I got it off eBay. So some kind of card reader. I have a sum up machine. There's other kinds. I have an affiliate link for this, so I'm going to stick it below in case you're looking for one. No kind of sponsorship or obligation, but it all helps out. They have like a refer a friend thing, so if you'd like to use that, I would appreciate it. I think you get money off and I get like a finder's fee thing. I'll put in the box what it is that you get. That's the one I use. There are other kinds. So yeah, some kind of card reader, some way of taking payment by card. I've done entire events where everybody pays by card. So yeah, it's really important to be able to take card payment. Then you need cash, a cash float. I keep mine, oh look, I've actually got some change in here. Keep mine in a bum bag. I had this made from a local, she makes like children's clothes and bits and bobs, and I asked her to make this, so it was jellyfish. I would say the only thing about a bum bag, so it's good in that if you're going to the loo or you need to walk away from your stall, it's on your body, no one can take your money. But the downside is that the money gets really warm, and maybe it's my neurospiciness, but I worry that when I hand people their change and it's all warm. Am I overthinking this? Probably. So anyway, bum bag. Some people use like a little money tin or whatever, but again, just think about making sure that you don't leave it where somebody could take it. So some kind of receptacle. I sell things, so my books are like £6.99, £7.99, so that's pennies. But think about what kind of change you might get and make sure you have plenty. It's really annoying when you need change and you have to ask other traders because they may also have limited change. So try and make sure you have enough. But as I say, lots of people pay by card now and are probably happy to pay by card if you don't have the change. You do have to pay for card payments, but it's only a couple of %. Like, obviously I'd rather take cash in that respect, but it is a very, very tiny difference. So for the convenience, I think because people have various like Apple Pay and things like that, it makes it a lot easier for people to just buy something and tap and not think so much. So I think it is very good to be able to take a card payment for that spontaneous, you know, without the cash coming out and people thinking more deeply. I don't know. Is that marketing psychology? I might have made that up. Next thing is some kind of way of keeping a record of what you've sold. So in the old days, I would have a notebook, put a date on it. I used to be really rubbish at that, and I'd have all these lists and didn't know which one was for which. And all your products and a tally, and try and remember to actually do it. Even better is, I don't know about the other card readers, but this one, the app on my phone has, I can add all my products as items. I'm sure you can do this with all the different types, but I have the items, and then when somebody buys, I can choose all the things they've bought, and then I can choose either card or cash, and if it's cash, it just records the sale, and then that's all in the app with the date and everything I need. So that's how I do it now, because bits of paper didn't work massively well for me. So however you want to do it, some way of recording what you sold, so at the end of the day you can check your cash and your stock and all of the things. Next on my list is a whole load of random stuff. It may or may not be in here, but these are helpful things. Scissors. You would not believe the amount of times that I've had to lend people scissors, or I've had to borrow scissors. Very helpful. Some kind of tape. Also very useful. Sometimes you just randomly end up, something needs to be taped down or something. Tape is just, it's a handy thing to have. I take pegs to peg my tablecloth, but occasionally they've come in handy for other things too. So pegs are helpful. And rocks I've got on my list now. The reason being, when you do an outdoor event, things can start blowing away. So I actually do have a load of rocks in my bag. The rocks are not compulsory, just it's helpful, right? These are things I found it to be handy to have with me. There we are. Next on my list is anything promotional. So personally, I have, so I transport them just in a folder. I've got all of my like flyers, my bookmarks, my business cards, anything promotional that you may want to have. And I also have a big pull-up thingy banner. You can have like the vinyl ones. There's lots of different options, but make sure if you are having some kind of promo. So I used to have, I probably don't have it here, an A4, just in a cheap A4 frame. I printed out a thing about me. In fact, my price list is in here. So you can do things like that. You can print out something, there's my price list, and just have it in a little, this is from Poundland, just a little frame. So however you want to do that. Price labels, all of those kinds of things, and any kind of dressing for the table. So I used to put shells everywhere. I don't so much now, but sometimes I will. I actually usually have them with me because I get in conversations with children about sea creatures, and then I can get my shells out. I have some bunting I crocheted because I just wanted a bit of colour on the front of my table, so I take that. You might want fairy lights, you might want all sorts of bits and pieces, anything relevant to what you do, and try and make a nice eye-catching display. The next thing is layers. Think about what you wear. Even at an indoor event, the temperature can be quite variable. Sometimes you're sat in front of a radiator, or it's just a really hot day and you're absolutely sweltering. I've had awful sunburn on an outdoor selling event, so sun cream, or you can be freezing. That could be outside or it could be indoors where you're in like a village hall and it's not properly heated and they're leaving the door open all the time. So just be really prepared to layer up, layer down, because there's no telling. Gloves, hats, you know, all of the things. It really is about the layering. If you're outdoors and it's a really cold day, your feet can get very cold from being on the floor. So multiple pairs of socks and boots and hand warmers, all of those kinds of things can be helpful. But just be aware, even at an indoor event, I've been sat before by the door and just had like constant air and like people breezing in and out, and I'm really, really cold. So be prepared for all kinds of temperatures. There is no knowing. And the last thing I have on my list is food and drink. It's very easy to go to an event and to buy way more than you've sold, particularly if you haven't taken any food or drink with you and you end up buying lots of coffee and you buy yourself lunch and you get yourself snacks. If you want to do that, like, go for it. But for me, I will take lunch, I will take some snacks, I'll take water, I might take a coffee with me, and then I might buy myself a coffee or a treat during the day, depending on how I'm doing. But yeah, I think to making sure that you have food and drink with you, avoids the temptation, and you know, it's just nice to sit and snack during the day. You can also, if you're doing an outdoor event or a dog-friendly event, take a water bowl for dogs, particularly on a hot day. That can be a really nice thing to do. So yeah, water for dogs is an option. Some people take sweets for kids, so you know, when kids come up, they can have a lollipop or whatever to you know, engage younger customers. That's something you can do if you want, but yeah, mainly right now talking about food and drink for you, so that you are comfortable for the day. And do make sure you've got a little bit of money on you in case you do need to buy a hot drink, because it can be a long one. I think I have covered everything. I didn't mention, I don't think, pens, because pens are helpful if you are an author signing things, and make sure their pen's appropriate for signing. Some of my books have weird surfaces, so I have certain pens for that. You never know when you might need to scribble something down, give someone your details. If you want to have a newsletter sign up, that can be a helpful thing. But basically, I think that kind of covers it all. And I think when you do your first event, you get a sense of, oh, I wish I'd have had this with me. Or you look at other sellers and what they do and think, well, that's a good idea and I like that. Lots of the things that I have, I've cherry picked off of other sellers and gone, oh, I like that, that would work for me. And so that you end up with a setup that looks professional, that looks engaging, as well as you being happy and comfortable for the whole day. That's kind of an overall overview of everything, and I really hope it's helpful. I hope you enjoy your first few events. You know, go for things that feel really comfortable so you can get used to what to say, as I said, but also look for things that are going to have lots of footfall, so you sell lots of things, and I hope they're really successful. Do tell me in the comments how you get on. I'd love to know. Did you have a great event? How did it go? What did you learn? Is there anything helpful that you can tell other people in the comments? I really enjoy an in-person event. They're really fun. I love networking with the other sellers. You end up adding everybody on social media. And what I should say as a last thing actually is, do make sure you take a picture. It's great for social media, and say, I'm here with you, looking kind of having a lovely day and showing how fab it is, and put it on social media throughout the day. It's not just good for promotion, but actually I really like looking back on these things. So yeah, that can be really fun too. Anyway, pop in the comments anything that you think would be helpful. I hope that you found it helpful yourselves. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done so already. I typically talk about books and authory stuff, and there's loads of old videos with useful stuff that you can take a look at, and I will link those selling event vlogs below, so take a look at those. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all soon for my next one.